In this video, we are going to be talking about what's going on in the NFT market, some major fire sales when it comes to the bluest of chips, as well as a major update with the Parallax Genesis NFT. First thing we are going to be talking about is the crypto markets. Now, if you've been following along the last 24 hours, you have known that Ethereum kind of has been pumping up a little bit. I believe even yesterday, it even touched 1.8K. Pretty crazy. So even during a bear market, we see these ridiculous rallies where, at one point Ethereum was at $800, $900, and it pretty much doubled all the way to 1.8K, which is absolutely insane, and especially during a bear market. And obviously with the news of the merge happening, a lot of people are speculating that maybe that's going to increase the value of Ethereum, or maybe it will dump after the merge. Who knows? But the hype drives the narrative, and the narrative determines whether or not people want to buy. Even with that said, Ethereum has been trading sideways for the past few days. We've seen this before, so better than dumping, where people are still optimistic in a sense about the NFT markets. But a lot of bags are still going down when Ethereum is going up when it comes to NFTs. Now moving into the non-sand index 500, NFTs again moving sideways. Blue chip top 10 projects, a little more volume, but for the most part not that much of a difference. And we can kind of see by jumping around different tools, there are some newer projects like 8 Aliens, not really familiar with that one, that are getting a lot of volume, while other projects are losing a little bit of volume, like Webaverse recently just minted, so obviously that's why there's going to be less volume there. But I did want to talk about one particular project that we've been covering over the past few days, and that is going to be Moonbirds. Now, as you know, Moonbirds recently went CCO, meaning that anybody can use the rights to your Moonbirds, which create a lot of FUD within the Moonbirds community, because they're like, I paid 20 ETH for this, and now anybody can use my IP. And so we've seen the floor price going down, so it's like 14 ETH right now. A lot of sales have been happening, so people buying on the floor, people accepting bids for 12 ETH, 14 ETH, 13 ETH, right? Whereas not too long ago, it was like 18, 19, 20. Now it's going to be interesting to see how Moonbirds weathered this storm, and one could even argue that the value of a Moonbird was too high for what it was. Maybe people start realizing that. Maybe they're like, oh, maybe there's not too much value here. And again, it's all speculative value, right? People buy these things with the intention that one day it will be worth more. It's not necessarily that you get all these things right off the bat by paying 20 ETH for a Moonbird. So maybe it's correcting, or maybe it's just the news being priced in where there's like maximum FUD and people are scared. They don't know what's going to happen, so they rather take their money out and not risk their money and move their money somewhere else, right? So everyone's in a different place. Some people can just hold, they don't care. Some people are just like, well, 14 ETH is a lot of money to me, so I'm definitely not going to just keep it here if I don't know if it's going to go up or down. So maybe if you're into Moonbirds and you believe in it in the long term and you think this is a fair price, maybe it's opportunity to buy. But again, there's always risk with how the CCO thing will play out, because if you're not able to use your IP, then it's like this is a very different move. But we also seen projects like NownDAO, for example, they are CCO as well. I mean, they're still selling a new Noun every day for like 60 ETH, right? Granted, there's only like a few hundred of these versus 10K. Different perspectives to look at for sure. Now, real quick, I want to talk about the Parallax NFT and some major news that is happening. One of my big goals with the Parallax NFT is to really focus on education, right? I want to bring together people who watch my YouTube videos and they want to learn more, whether they are investors, traders, speculators, and for the most part, I do want to attract a lot of builders as well, people who want to help build projects, who want to start their own projects, and I want to provide that education to help you guys out. So one of the things that we are doing is we're going to have an educational series. We're just going to call it Parallax Academy, and the first one that we're going to do, which is actually next week, is going to be all about NFT marketing. Now, this is only going to be for holders, where we're going to have a live course or class on Discord, right? Only for holders, where we're going to take a look at some of the top projects that are building massive hype to sell out their NFTs. How does somebody go from, nobody knows who my project is, to suddenly getting thousands of likes and retweets and things like that? We're going to break that all down. We're also going to show you how other projects who don't rely on hype and don't get these crazy engagement are able to sell out and still maintain their floor prices. So the different strategies for both, one is more tailored towards hype and like people like trying to go for it and like degenning and stuff like that. The other route is more like curating an experience, curating your community so that you get the right people in the door. There's a lot you can learn from both sides, and maybe you can mix it up depending on what type of project you want to be. But this is what we are going to be covering next week in the Parallax Academy, and you gotta have a Parallax Genesis in order to get access to this special training. Now, if you want a Parallax Genesis, just know that they are available on Opensea. Link is going to be in the description of this YouTube video. And again, we're not an anime project. We are more of a media and educational company, but we just have an anime PFP because it's more fun. It's fun to rock it as your PFP, but at the end of the day, it's all about education. It's all about creating media. It's all about inspiring people and onboarding new people into Web3. That is what we are all about. So if you're interested in education and learning more about NFT marketing, NFT sales, and you want to maybe start your own project one day, the Parallax Genesis is the place to be. Now, in other news, this is something that happened a week ago, but I want to cover it real quick, and that is Gary V's VeeFriends recently received funding from A16Z for $50 million. So I wonder what VeeFriends is actually valued. It must be in the hundreds of millions at this point. Obviously, VeeFriends is like considered a very top project. They have two collections, the original collection, and then they have VeeFriends Series 2 collection. And a lot of people are pretty bullish on Gary Vee, especially because he has such a huge personal brand. And A16Z has invested in like some of the top NFT projects like Artifact Studios, 48 Yacht Club. So, they definitely have some pull when it comes to NFT space. And I'm pretty sure they have the right connections and they know how to push a project when it comes to increasing its floor price, getting the right people to hold that specific NFT to build the hype and demand. So, for me, I'm always watching what A16Z does because it seems like whatever they buy, a lot of times they're able to pump the price. If they're putting 50 million into VeeFriends, they definitely expect a return on investment. If you know anything about venture capitalists, they want multiples on their money. To make VC money work, you cannot just 3x your money. You need to like 10x your money or more. And so if you kind of jump on the bandwagon with these type of companies that are able to do this, you're in a more safer position. Now, you have to understand that just because A16Z invests in VeeFriends, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna pump the floor price of an NFT. It's possible that they do certain things to do that because it plays into a larger goal. But when a company invests into a project, they are getting equity into a company, meaning they're going to own a percentage of VeeFriends, right? Now, when you buy an NFT, you just understand you're buying a collectible that doesn't necessarily have equity in that company. So the price of the NFT can totally tank, but the person who owns a percentage of the company can still win. We've seen historically that large projects are able to pump the floor price when it comes to seeding these NFTs to the right influencers. That does work to drive the narrative, especially during a bull market when there's a lot of new news coming in and new people coming in, just like Snoop Dogg bought this. You just got to understand like how that game goes. It's all speculative. It's all like kind of like gambling in a sense, but I wanted to put it on your radar. Now, speaking of speculation, recent project that I've been seeing on Twitter quite a bit is going to be Crypto DickButts. Now, this project has been out for quite some time now, and recently they just been pumping up like crazy. I remember this one point where it was like blowing up, a lot of volume during the peak bull run, kind of died off because it is a meme, right? Like it's called Crypto DickButts, so obviously it's a meme. But again, memes come back to life, just like how Dogecoin and Shiba Inu come back to life. There's no like utility for it, but just because there's so much attention to it, that is a utility, right? And so right now they're getting crazy amounts of volume, similar to what it was like in the peak bull run in October of last year. How does this project pump up like crazy again? Could it be that somehow that certain individuals are coming together to pump it? I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, honestly, but maybe it's just a powerful meme that the retail wants to get into. I'm not really sure. In the NFT space, I just assume that there are people collaborating to make something happen, and I could be wrong, but if you really look into certain things and you are part of certain groups and people say certain things, you would understand that a lot of projects pump because of whales coming together and pushing a price up. It is going up, but just be careful because sometimes prices manipulate it, and even if it's not, some projects can't go on forever. Not everything is going to be a Dogecoin, right? Be very careful of that. Now, in other crypto news, we're going to talk about the US Treasury banning Tornado Cash because it potentially is used for money laundering. This is quite interesting because, I've never used Tornado Cash myself, but basically when you want to hide your money or when you have a bunch of crypto and you want to mix it up with other people and put the money somewhere else so you kind of like lose the trace, it's just like moving money around, shuffling it around, and people don't know whose money is what, right? They kind of banned it because, so much money was going through there. When that happens, you're going to get a lot of bad actors in the crypto space. And, there's always this news of like crypto is used for money laundering, NFTs are used for money laundering. And it's like, when I first got into crypto space, a lot of people were like, oh, like it's only like a very small percentage of people that do that. Me talking to different people, being in the space for a while now, almost a year now, I have learned that people actually do use crypto and NFTs for money laundering. They actually do, and at a big level. I don't know what percentage it is relative to, the rest of the crypto volume, but definitely people do shuffle a lot of money and launder it through crypto. So it's quite interesting because Tornado Cash, I believe, is open source software. So it's going to be interesting to follow like what is right, what is wrong, right? So you provide a tool that it's open source, anybody can use, but if people use it the wrong way, does that mean that you should get banned? It's kind of like saying you can use the internet for good and bad, but if you use it for the wrong thing, then you can get shut down, right? At the end of the day, governments kind of control know what is okay and what's not okay. And that's why people believe in crypto so much, because they're like, oh, let's break out the system of the government, which I kind of understand that sentiment. But at the same time, if you are living on the soil of a certain country, you kind of have to play by the rules. And the only way around that is you have multiple passports. You live in these weird places where they're not going to govern you, right? And so that's a whole different thing. Everybody has their own perspective on that. I don't want to get too political because everyone has their own different views. But turning our cash down, it is what it is. But I'll be following along just because I'm curious to know what's going to happen with this and what that means for the future of open source software when people are using it for maybe not the right reasons, right? And by the way, guys, we have an interview coming up with one of the founders of Isekai Meta. Is going to be interviewed on the Parallax podcast, which will be available on YouTube. So let me know in the comments what questions you want me to ask their project. And if you didn't know, Isekai Meta, they're doing an anime project. They teamed up with a legit studio that has worked on some major animes in the past, and they're trying to get into that anime space with NFTs. So if you have questions on the business of that, because I have a lot of questions myself, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to pick the best one and ask the team. So with that said, that is everything we got to cover for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.